Hi Scaredy Cats, it's me, Scaredy Matt. Well folks, it's July 14th, the end of summer. We could try to hold on to this fleeting warmth, but it's best to remember that everything ends eventually. Soon it will be dark and cold, but that too shall end, and summer will be back again before you even know it. But we can't see off the summer sunshine without finishing off our foray into the Phantasm feature films. Phantasm RAVAGER was released in 2016, 8 years after Phantasm Oblivion. It kinda came out of nowhere. Its production wasn't really publicized, they just kinda released it one day. Initially, they had planned for this footage to be a series of short films, probably to raise money for yet another movie that they actually wanted to make, but for whatever reason they spliced it together and made one Frankenstein of a movie and released it. Tragically, shortly before the film was released, Angus Scrimm, who played the tall man in all 5 films, passed away. For good or for ill, that likely makes this the last Phantasm movie. I don't think people are going to be interested in a Phantasm movie without Angus Scrimm in it. I certainly wouldn't be. Ravager is kind of a mixed bag. On a $300,000 budget, they turned out the best movie they realistically were ever going to. The effects look cheap and dopey, the camera never stands the fuck still, and it's difficult to conceal the way that these actors have aged in flashbacks. This is the first Phantasm movie to be shot digitally, and oof, it shows. It looks like a lost pilot for a Phantasm TV series. I'd heard nothing but terrible things about this movie. I dreaded watching it, and I have to say, you're all out of your minds, this movie's a fucking blast. Sure, it looks like absolute hot dog shit, but it gets the tone right. Not just one tone either, it manages to get the dualistic tone of the franchise bang on. It's like, on the one hand, a surrealistic allegory about grief, and also a macho meat-headed action movie. Phantasm RAVAGER was the first Phantasm movie since the first Phantasm movie that felt like it had something to say. I'm not sure what, but it felt like it was trying. We pick up just after part 4. Reggie is back in the desert. Oh boy, more desert, yes please. Just what these movies needed. His Hemi-Cuda has been jacked, so he's walking along the road until the guy who jacked it shows up and honks at him to get off of the road. Reggie plays it cool and pays the guy to get a ride, and then pulls this sick-ass maneuver.
You don't see too many 71 Cudas driving around anymore. Funny thing, I had one just like it. Of course, mine had a chrome-plated 9mm loaded with steel-jacketed wad cutters in the center console. Oh, that's right. It was in the glove box.
Long gone is the comic relief Reggie of previous films. This Reggie is a world-weary old hippie just trying to make it back to his friends. He's been through the ringer and he's just completely done with this bullshit. So Reggie kicks the thief out, goes on driving, but then some spheres chase him and kill the thief. He shoots the spheres and dons a pair of really awkward-looking sunglasses. Whoa! Reggie's a badass! Or is he? Or is he, instead of being a badass, rather just a guy in a nursing home who has been diagnosed with dementia and he's been imagining the whole Phantasm series? Maybe that's what's happening. Stay tuned! Old man Mike doesn't buy any of this shit and he's like, okay, I need you to keep your mind engaged, so tell me the story again. Back in the past or present, Reggie meets a foxy lady named Dawn whose car has broken down and gives her a ride to her farmhouse. Another foxy lady for Reggie to just pick up on the side of the road. He found the waypoint where the woman was and he picked up a woman power-up. She lets him stay the night, but obviously rejects his sexual advances. He tells her that he's gonna write a song about her, which seems to genuinely kind of make her attracted to him. Reggie Bannister gets a little musical number, which is neat.
In the warmth of your mountain cabin, in the glow of a newborn song, and I'll be sitting here till noon.
Dawn's listening and reconsiders sleeping with Reggie, but by the time she goes downstairs, he's already all tuckered out. Also, the tall man is waiting outside. He sends Reggie's brain back to the nursing home where Jebediah Morningside, the tall man's secret identity, is his roommate. Only it's not Jebediah, it's still the tall man. and he tells Reggie he'll never be safe. Also, the Lavender Lady is underneath the bed. Remember her? From the first movie? She's back, except now she's not the tall man in disguise, I don't think. I think she's another thing. So Reggie wakes up and looks for Dawn, but she got orbed. So he runs outside to collect his weaponry, including his signature 4-barrel shotgun, increasingly irrelevant chainsaw, as well as a sword and nunchucks. Reggie is half the Ninja Turtles now. The spears kill Dawn's farmhand Demeter and a friggin' horse, so Reggie runs away and finds a giant spear, and he escapes through a conveniently placed dimensional fork. He runs into the tall man who's just kind of standing around, and the tall man offers to give him back his wife and daughter if he betrays Mike. What? Reggie's family was killed in part 2, but they never mentioned that he had a wife and daughter. What the fuck? It's really weird that this only comes up like 3 movies later. Anyway, he sends Reggie to a mortuary, so finally, we have a mortuary in a Phantasm movie. A movie and a half has gone by without a fucking mortuary. Finally, they're back in a mortuary where Phantasm movie should take place. The Lavender Lady is there, and you know what, folks? She's still got it. A spooky face, that is. Ah! Ah! So Reggie goes into a cave in the mortuary, and there's Tall Man, and he's like, yo, hey, remember earlier when I made you an offer like 10 minutes ago? And Reggie's like, nah, I still don't want it. And the Tall Man's like, yo, I don't understand loyalty. What's up with that? So Reggie wakes up, strapped to a gurney with a dimensional fork strapped to his head. And he's rescued by 2 gas-masking non-grave diggers. One is named Chunk, and the other is named Joy. Joy is Dawn, but also Joy is not Dawn. Chunk rules. Chunk never stops kicking ass for the whole movie. We stand Chunk here at Scaredy Cats. Turns out Joy, who is not Dawn, and Chunk work for future Mike, and Reggie has been in a coma for a whole decade. Oh, and also the Tall Man took over the world with giant spears and an alien virus that makes your head explode like scanners. And now the entire planet is an obliterated hellscape, except for the parts later that aren't. Then there's a lot of back and forth between Reggie in the hospital world and in the apocalypse world. Hospital Mike and Reggie are sharing dreams. Apocalypse Reggie and Mike confront the Tall Man on his home planet, and Chunk blows up the Tall Man because the Tall Man killed Joy, who was not Dawn. All of this culminates in a scene where both worlds converge, and Reggie fights off a bunch of gravers with his shotgun. Mike and Reggie get cornered until... just watch. It's Jody! He's alive! I bet you're wondering how. Well... but you know what? It doesn't matter. This is probably all a hallucination because Reggie's back in the hospital, dying from his dementia with Mike and Jody. Wait, Jody's supposed to be dead in this world too. What the fuck? Anyway, Apocalypse Mike, Jody, and Reggie drive off into the sunset, determined to go up north where it's cold and the Tall Man can't follow. In a mid-credit sequence, Chunk returns from the Tall Man's planet, missing a hand, and meets Rocky from Phantasm Part 3. She's back. Rocky's back, everybody. They get into the CUDA and drive off with the trio. Also, he grabs her tit in one scene, which really makes me regret standing him earlier. We don't stand Chunk anymore here at Scaredy Cats. And just when I thought this movie couldn't please me more, they play a Phantasm rap. They made a Phantasm rap for me, Matthew.
Running from a tall man, mad scientist. Try to add me to his client list, but if I walk through those gates, it'll be me and him. I'm not trying to tell him my best friend that I'm still me, but he don't agree cause he...
Folks, you know I love when a horror movie has a rap song. This movie is a confusing slipshod mess. It's deliberately self-contradictory, confusing on its own logic and the logic of previous films, and it complicates both. It's kind of implied in this movie that the Phantasm films all take place in many dimensions, and as they converge, events change and shift, which honestly answers a lot of questions I've had about these movies from the get-go. But on the other hand, this movie is still left ambiguous. You're still given a sense that you're not quite sure what's happening and what the characters are dreaming or imagining. This franchise has come a long way, and not always in the right direction. What started off as a surreal tone poem about grief and the fear of death gradually morphed into an action sci-fi series that became depressingly literal. But Ravager mostly lands on its feet by combining and contrasting both of these elements, letting you pick and choose which you think is actually happening, while still leaving a lot to the imagination. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but none of the Phantasm movies are. It's the send-off that I think the series deserved, if maybe not the one most people would have asked for. Where it succeeds, it soars, and where it fails, and it fails a lot, it's still interesting. And so that's Phantasm. I'm glad I got to share these movies with you because honestly I love them to bits, and I hope that I've encouraged at least some of you to watch them too. Horror movies aren't always frightening. Sometimes they approach the horrifying in other ways. Sometimes they're stories about triumph over horror. Sometimes they're about the way that everyday horrors can overwhelm you. Sometimes they're about building a community to overcome horrible things together and leaning on one another when you're not strong enough to keep going on your own. The Phantasm movies won't scare you, but at their best, they can make you think and feel in ways that other genre films aren't ambitious enough to even try. At their worst, they're a lot of quirky fun made by a passionate group of friends whose love for these weirdo movies and one another shines through in every single picture. Maybe it's just me though. The end of summer, which takes place each year on July 14th, always makes me sentimental. As the sun gives way to the falling autumn leaves and then to a cushiony soft sheet of snow, my mind drifts to a more innocent time. Thanks for watching this video about Phantasm Ravager. If you haven't seen the previous entries in this series, I got a whole playlist for you can watch about all the Phantasm movies. They're all a lot of fun. Hey, why don't you hit the like button and subscribe here for more videos every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Kiss, 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 kiss.